I don't believe in censorship at all. I don't think censorship will get you anywhere. But what I do believe is that you can offer a better story. So it's not about censorship, it's about displacement. You get proactive displacement. If you don't like the story people have, you need to somehow offer them and sell them a better story. And you need to be bigger, better, and faster than the other guy.
Woo, welcome. You have now entered Mad Warfare, mutually assured distraction, where we explore the weird, terrifying, and sometimes hilarious ways war is fought today, and how we can all protect our minds before we go too mad to find them.
Oh my!
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
How can you talk if you haven't got a brain?
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
It's a very special guest today that you've known for a really long time. How would you introduce him to your best friend or somebody that didn't know about his world?
It's not an overstatement to say I wouldn't be in this field around cognitive security if it wasn't for the work of Rand Waltzman. I don't think it's an overstatement to call him the godfather of cognitive security. Maybe that should even be the name of the show, I don't know. And what he did, it's usually talked about in terms of his times at DARPA for the kind of stuff he did around social media and strategic communication, the things he did at Rand Corporation, and some of the wonderful writing, including the writing that coined terms like cognitive security. I remember having a conversation where one of the first, if not the first, kind of AI companies way back in the day. So you've always lived in this period of being like 10 to 30 years ahead of the game, and even what you're going to be talking about right here, I would say, is 5 to 15 years ahead of the game. So we're all very lucky to have you in our lives in terms of the field and on this show. So hopefully I did a decent enough job at introducing Dr. Rand Waltzman.
Ooh, the godfather of cognitive security.
I don't know if anybody called you that. I don't even know if you like that, but yeah, I think it's true.
Actually, I have heard that before.
Oh, yeah? Okay. So, yeah.
But I think my favorite introduction somebody ever made to me was, he was introducing me to a friend, and he said, look, this guy can speak 8 languages. And the other guy said, yeah, but does he have anything to say?
Very good.
Boom, boom.
Again, like so many wonderful. I know we want to talk more about some of these more future threats that are on your mind. But I'd love to, at least this audience, learn a little bit, more about yourself, your experience and the things that got you to thinking up cognitive security as like a concept, all the way to kind of things that you're doing now.
As a small child, my father was very fond of con men of various sorts. He loved to listen to con men. And so we'd be walking down the street and, except a guy making a pitch, doing something, my father always stopped to listen and would always talk about it. So I've been exposed to this kind of things and as a child, so I sort of come by the interest, honestly. And my first real active interest in it was in the 80s, when I worked for the very first, basically the very first commercial AI company at the beginning of the last AI wave, which was the expert systems era. And I worked at one of basically the really first expert systems company. It was founded by a bunch of people from Stanford, who's down the street coming on campus. And, that was in 1983.
1983, wow, yeah.
Yes. And, but 3 years after that, I decided to go back to school and with a PhD. And the title of my thesis was going to be, and it didn't happen for various reasons, but it was going to be the automatic generation of plausible disinformation. I was in computer science, I was an AI person. And so that was going to be my AI thesis. So I had a real interest, okay, well, how can I get a machine to automatically generate disinformation, and specifically plausible disinformation? So you can't just have random junk. It has to be plausible to your listener. If it's not plausible, then it's not going to be effective. It was a few years after that I ended up going to DARPA as a program manager.
Yeah.
I started at DARPA in 1989.
Wow.
And I was, at that time, I ran the computer vision program, what was called the DARPA Image Understanding Program. That was one of the longest running programs ever at DARPA. I think around like 25 years. You know, in those days, DARPA was completely different situation than it is today. Just the whole structure was different. The way programs were structured was different.
Yeah.
We had like one program in computer vision, there was a program in operating systems, there was a program in autonomous vehicles. It was a different time, different day, different place. I mean, I could see that when I went back to DARPA for my second tour in 2011, then by the time I came back for the second tour, then I was really much more interested in the social media stuff. And, you know, it took, the idea is to take the whole idea of propaganda to a whole different level.
Some of the best ways to, I think, help and think about these future threats is to really understand what's happened in the past.
Especially in this kind of work. I mean, you know, technology evolves and all that's fine, but at the end of the day, the target of all of this stuff are people.
Mm-hmm.
People are the targets, and people do not change.
Yeah.
People are people,
Well said.
have been for a long time. You know, there's very little evolution, I'm afraid, in human beings.
Yeah.
There hasn't been any for a long time, I think. But so that's why you have to, all of these techniques people use. I mean, the techniques may evolve, but the target audience, the targets haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really want to see X of these things, you can, you know, studying historical techniques that people have used and how people reacted to them is very instructive in terms of developing the next generation of technology. It's, at the end of the day, it's all about people. And that's why it really amazes me. You know, a lot of people who do, you know, who've done studies of social media and networks and everything else, for somehow they seem to leave out the human aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I read papers yesterday where, you know, the idea that you need to take human psychology into account, that it's really important and it plays a big role, seemed to be a revelation. I mean, how could that possibly be a revelation? That's what it's all about. It's the audience you have to worry about. The audience matters. You know, people in the military, people go to a battlefield. But guess what? The battlefield is the population. The entire population are the targets. They are the battlefield. There's no getting around that.
Do you feel like there's been like an administration or a time where you're like, okay, like folks are really, really getting it, that mind and some of the more non-kinetic sort of things, and including funding around that?
You know, domestically, there have been plenty of times.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all psychological manipulation, so it's emotional manipulation. So it's, I mean, you know, the current government are very, very expert. Previous governments have been doing it, and they're not. The current government is not doing this for defense purposes. They're doing it for their own purposes. It's being done here on a massive scale. So, you know, you don't need to look any further than your own backyard. Really, you know, we don't need the Russians. We don't need the Chinese. So I would say the current period is, you really want good examples. Wow. And when you can see authorities in one sentence, just say contradictions, nonsense, then the continual string, and their audience just, it's okay, whatever they say, it's okay. Somehow it just goes right through. I mean, you know, then you have to ask people, how is it that they managed to put people in a position in order to be able to do that?
I get it in terms of like our national security apparatus, where you should, this stuff should only be focused in terms of OCONUS outside the continental U.S. and like that kind of review, and of course, like not doing it on your own citizens, but only looking internationally, and only if stuff comes in from international, even if international threat actors use domestic, not operators, but just at least voices. I guess, you know, I think useful idiots is still a proper academic term, but as soon as that gets domestic, they don't want to look at it whatsoever, and that really is kind of a tragedy. And then obviously in terms of the lack of, you know, it's another objective fact, that kind of research and even looking at it domestically, especially looking at it domestically, has not only been defunded, but has been actively kind of prosecuted by some folks, and that's just a tragedy because, again, like the data is afoot for those who are brave enough to go after and look at the insights abound.
You see, I mean, this whole idea of being able to separate stuff coming from abroad versus domestic,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that idea is completely bogus. I mean, once you think, there's no way you really can do that, in my view.
Yeah.
You can't, you have internally generated, you have things that are stimulated from outside, you have stuff that stimulates the internal elements from outside. You have people from outside who are pushing stuff in without any usefulity. It's just direct. I mean, it's all over the place. And to believe for 1 second that you can just disentangle it and study the pieces individually, I mean, it's like naive in the extreme. And the only thing that, that would tell you is that there's no real interest in dealing with the actual problems. I mean, it's all a fraud. The whole approach is doomed to fail to begin with. And to me, it looks like it's set up to fail. Because I don't think...
Why do you say that? You said earlier, it seems like there's no interest in actually addressing the problem. How would we articulate that problem, and why wouldn't the U.S. want to address it?
Okay. So about influence, there's a big influence industry, right? There are lots of people who are doing this for a living. You want them to push some idea, you pay them money, they push any kind of idea you want. Some of these companies are really, really big. Now, you look at the people who their customers are. I mean, there are political operatives, there are people who specialize in political influence, there are people who specialize in commercials, I mean, just selling, Wonder Bread, whatever.
Yeah.
So you have all of these people. And if you look at all of these big companies who are doing this, big and small, their customers are, guess who? Basically everybody. Their customers are politicians, their customers are big corporations, their customers are foreign governments, their customers, they all have all of these customers, right? And then you have to ask the question, well, then whose advantage is it? Who is going to be willing to shut down that kind of operation? If everybody and his mother is using this kind of service, who's going to shut it down? The answer is nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the current government, right? If you were going to shut down, I mean, come on. If you were going to shut down all this kind of stuff, no, they would never agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, a lot of things in social media, specifically the social media forums that really helped bolster this administration, like nobody's talking about TikTok ban anymore.
Why would they want that? That's one of their most useful tools. And it's not only them, they're not the only players.
These folks who do this, and obviously they want to learn how to do it better, but kind of keep the magic almost to themselves. Some of these folks that are in the influence industry, like how do they share their wisdom of the ages?
When I started in AI, actually when I was a student in the 60s, you didn't go out and buy a book about Lisp programming. There weren't any. You didn't go out and buy a book about how to program in Prolog. It didn't exist. So the way you learned was you sat at the feet of somebody who knew how to do that. And you learned like that, like the old-fashioned apprentice system. You have to find somebody to show you. And I think with influencers, a similar kind of thing. You have to sit with somebody who knows what to do.
Yeah, it's still this apprentice sharing tradecraft, and
Now, there is one thing though where you really can learn, and it's academics, which is really important. So, for example, when you hear people talk about AI today, you almost never hear anybody talk about a branch of AI called affective computing. That is a branch of AI which has to do with computing with emotions, and that I will tell you, you're going
Right?
What's that?
How does that work?
Yes, well, that's a whole field by itself. It's a whole subfield of AI, including your emotions. Well, I'll give you an example, a really modern example from my own work that I've been doing lately. So you take the use of large language models, and I want to use a model to say, well, so here's the experiments I've actually done. I say, create a scene, create a scenario that will evoke this specific emotion in the listener or the participant in the virtual reality scene. Can you create a scene for me? And the general topic is so and so, and I want it to invoke specifically this kind of emotion. And guess what? I can actually get this thing to generate these kind of scenarios. It will be able to generate a scenario that is designed to evoke a specific kind of emotion. That works. It can do that. Now that's the use of,
Making me happy.
huh? Yes, make you happy.
Like sit at home and
A scene.
design scenarios to make me happy.
Yes. Yes, but that's an example of what people in affective computing can do. Now, normally, I would say most of the work in affective computing, a lot of it has to do with human-computer interfaces. So, for example, you want to design an interface that can detect the emotional state of the user,
Yeah.
and then react accordingly. So modify the way it interacts with the user, depending on their emotional state. How they're reacting emotionally.
Are these being used in
Yes.
currently in social media platforms, for example?
Well, I mean, the most of the applications I know of, no, I don't know that anybody's really using a social media platform. They probably are. I would be very surprised if they weren't. But the commercial uses so far this kind of technology. So, for example, there's a big group at MIT at the Media Lab.
The Media Lab at MIT,
right?
yeah.
Yes, they have a big affective computing group. They're not alone. There are many, and people are. I'm starting to see papers about using affective computing techniques in influence operations. For example, there's some spin-offs from the Media Lab, from the affective computing group, where what they're doing is they're looking at measuring people's emotional reactions to things.
Yeah.
So, for example, have you ever been to like go to Las Vegas, and the people who go, they come in and watch these commercials,
Yeah.
or watch this sitcom and tell us how you react to it.
Okay,
So we'll have you fill
focus
out some
group
kind
sort of stuff,
questionnaire.
yeah.
We'll give you a free dinner.
Oh, right,
But it's not even in the group. You're one-on-one in the eat for the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But they're really fun. You sit down in front of the TV screen, you put on a headphone, and they show you something, and they like a commercial, and they periodically stop it, and then a question will flash on, and they want you to answer the question about how you felt about it. Yeah, so it's and you sit and do that for 45 minutes, and they give you a coupon for free dinner. Okay, so that's one kind of use of it. So now what the technique would be is you can bypass all the stuff about having to stop it and ask them questions and everything else. You just wire somebody up, you take the right kind of measurements, and I can read how they're reacting emotionally. I don't have to ask them, which gives another layer of interpretation. Now I'm asking them to interpret really feel.
Was that a lot
But
of
I
the
can
goal,
bypass all
Yeah, was that a lot of the goal of neuromarketing at the time, to try to aim for something like that? Even though affective computer is also getting stuff in terms of like the facial micro expressions and things like that as well.
Yes, it's all about reading emotions of people.
Yeah.
So they're reading emotions for marketing purposes. Like another application this company did was they had somebody push a cart in a simulated grocery store, a physical setup,
Yeah.
and they were studying product placement, and they were looking to see how should you arrange the products so it grabs somebody's attention. And they would actually then have somebody go up and down the aisle, and then they were actually measuring where their attention was, how they were reacting to it, and so on. So those are sort of the commercial applications of affective computing at that time. But of course, I'm much more interested in the other ones where now I have a chat bot, a computer talking to somebody, and I'm trying to elicit a certain type of emotion, because given a certain emotional state, they should be receptive to one kind of a message or another.
Yeah.
And I want them to be maximally receptive. I want to fine tune my message to make sure that they're paying attention, that they're being receptive.
Yeah, with those
It is,
Fair enough.
right? All this kind of stuff. Slightly different use than the commercial one, trying to figure out.
It seems like a lot of this kind of affective or emotional sort of engineering and poking at people to go, we want you to buy more soap. And now it's like, we want you to feel more outrage. At least that's what it feels like. And I know there was recently I'm going to butcher this, but there was some kind of study where they set a bunch of AIs loose on each other. And because they're naturally biased, they were convincing each other to be more angry and divisive. And so it's basically like replicating the human environment. If there's no oversight or intervention or any kind of anything to help us be a better human than the robots like represent the worst of ourselves. And I don't know where that ramble's going, what kind of question I want to ask from there. It's what, I guess, what are you seeing in this future? Is it only dystopia, or do we have some kind of hope?
By the way, the paper that you mentioned, if you can't find it, I can send you a copy. One of the things that they talked about in this paper is that there's something intrinsic to the structure of social media that actually, where you end up, because of its structure, you end up having, echo chambers and people being separated. And it all comes from the underlying, they can show that that's a necessary consequence of the underlying structure of social media.
Is this even back in the day when it was like AOL chat rooms? That felt more, I don't know, less antagonistic, and you could reach people across the world. You wouldn't know where they would even be, or if we didn't have bots back then. I don't know. Did that kind of thinking behind the engineering come later with the Facebooks and that sort of thing, or was it earlier?
Well, in the days of these chat rooms, I mean, you had very similar kind of behavior to what you see in social media. I think you had people forming cliques, you had people forming all sorts of things in those chat rooms. There was etiquettes that people followed, which resulted in certain kind of behaviors. These etiquettes encouraged some kind of behavior, discouraged others. People formed into cliques and groups. The thing that was different was the scale. It only happened on a small groups of people. Whereas today, you can do things on a much larger scale. But even so, with the large scale, people are still forming into groups.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm just romanticizing AOL chat past when I was a teenager.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
Everything seemed better.
I don't think it was that much better, really. I think it had a lot of the same kind of problems, really.
It's interesting with the scale too. It's like, are humans always going to do this? You were talking about, people don't change. It seems like our tribalism or inclination to find smaller groups and in-group, out-group, and all that sort of stuff. Are we doomed to repeat that cycle over and over? And is social media only going to make that worse?
Well, to me, that's not clear. There's a difference between the way people behave in small groups or one-on-one and the way people behave at a very large scale, especially at a large scale where you can actually participate yourself. But, there's mob psychology versus individual psychology.
Like, with the time we have left, let's get more of the future. Hopefully it's a future. We can start with the negatives, but if there's ways to Terminator, stop the bots from the T-800s from attacking us. I'd love to hear that too. So yeah.
Well, I just read a paper, really interesting Chinese paper about. The paper was about Macau. So the authors of this paper explained that the population of Macau is generally pretty apathetic and not really going to get up and complain about much of anything for whatever reason. However, they said that what they realized was that if they try to make the whole thing fun and entertaining, that it would actually get people out. And what they had, now I don't remember what the name of it, what they called it was Egao, EGAO.
Okay.
Is the Chinese word. And it means like making fun, I think is what it meant.
They're having a party, but they're finding ways to kind of like make things like protesting and getting out and kind of speaking your mind, trying to make it fun.
Oh, it's a newly coined term, which can be translated as wicked fun.
Yes.
How fun is that?
Wicked fun. That's what it was. Well, because it's making fun of people.
Yeah.
So the way they're protesting is basically they kind of made the government officials, whoever they're protesting against, look stupid, look foolish. They're just making fun of people. So they're satirical cartoons, all sorts of satirical poems saying things about these guys, but making them look, showing that the public is not taking them seriously. I mean, to me, it looks like what it shows to the officials, and the only reason the officials seem to react to it is because it shows the public isn't taking them seriously.
Yeah.
That he's making fun. And so they apparently they don't like that. They don't like to think that people are not taking them seriously. But whatever, so these guys wrote a whole paper on this, and it really actually seems to work. It actually has gotten people out there and motivated. and these protests have resulted in real changes.
We've had a couple episodes in terms of talking about like the power of humor within the space. Disarming example of how one could use it for civil disobedience, the correct word, I'm not sure, but yeah, something around
But
that.
the point is, it all comes down to emotions. You're manipulating people's emotions. At the end of the day, it's all about that. All influence to me is about manipulating emotions. It all comes down to that.
Can I ask you, Rand, why do people not think that's the case? Why would people, a lot of people I've worked with, for example, in corporate spheres, it's like a revelation there that you could even possibly begin to consider that emotions would have some influence on human behavior. Why is it so prevalent that people don't, that's not an obvious thing?
People associate, being emotional with being irrational, whatever. Whereas there's been actually real work in cognitive science, because so without emotion, you actually can't have any rational thought. I mean, you're not going to be able to be logical unless you have some emotions involved.
Right. There's that case too of Damasio had a patient, Elliot, who got some kind of, Antonio Damasio is a neuroscientist for the audience, and he had a patient they called Elliot, I believe, and Elliot, he was like a functioning guy, working in business, intelligent, all this, and he had some kind of accident where he no longer could process emotions, and as a result could no longer make a decision to save his life, like just would sit around analyzing forever.
Exactly. I mean, there have been plenty of work done to show that without emotions, you have no decision-making ability, you can't be rational, you can't do much of anything. So why anybody would think that, not attacking emotions is the way to go? There was a really great movie, an old movie with Sidney Greenstreet, where he plays the head of a soap company, and he's talking to the advertising people, and they show him, their ideas for ads and everything else. And I don't know if you know who Sidney Greenstreet was. He was an actor, very big guy.
I'm ashamed. Keep going, though.
Yes, and so Sidney Greenstreet in his old movie, he talking to his PR people who he thought was, he says, he said the secret to advertising, he says, irritate, 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 irritate. That was his concept of how you got
We can
people's
find that
attention.
clip. That's hilarious.
So yes, I mean, there are the people who are really good at this and really know how to make it happen. They will days understand this about emotions. I mean, they know. Without emotional appeal, you're not going to have any influence happening. So I don't know what these people were telling you, but they're obviously not responsible for actually selling anything or making it do any of their business like that.
They're usually marketers, so I don't know.
I'm
This is like a very prevalent thing.
But then so, for a marketer, I can imagine, they're trying to show that what they do is principled and scientific and everything else. Right? So they maybe take a scientific approach, paying them for this kind of expertise, but and that's a speculation. I don't know, maybe people think that emotions are somehow a lower order thing, and something to look down on. It's not anything that you want to elevate to a central position. But the reality is, it is the central position. I'm sorry, it's really crucial. You get without it, you're not going to get anywhere.
Believe it or not, again, like the time just absolutely flew with you, Rand. What are some of these, what you feel like somewhat kind of like near future threats? I mean, when we probably met, we would have probably said like some of this AI stuff that we see today were some of those near future threats, but I guess that's very much here. But, just wanted to kind of give you a floor in terms of what you think are some of these near future threats that folks should have on their bingo card or whoever they use to kind of track what's going to happen.
The biggest threat is the audience. It lies within the audience itself.
The universal.
There's no pushback. That to me is that's the biggest problem. Technology will continue to evolve and everything. There's nothing to do about that. But the fact that there's no pushback on these things, that's the problem. And the people who claim to be, who are looking at, how we're going to build resilience and media literacy and all this is not real pushback. That's just, if you try to be too politically correct in whatever countermeasures you think you're going to have, you're dead. We may as well just save your money and your time and go.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to do anything.
What would real pushback look like?
Real pushback means a crucial element of real pushback is being proactively measured. So, for example, I don't believe in censorship at all. I don't think censorship will get you anywhere. But what I do believe is that you can offer a better story. So it's not about censorship, it's about displacement. You get proactive displacement. If you don't like the story people have, you need to somehow offer them and sell them a better story. And you need to be bigger, better, and faster than the other guy. So, this has been demonstrated pretty well in the literature. First out with a story is the most effective. Once you get it in people's heads, very hard to change it. But there are ways, and there are ways to do that. But you need to be proactive. You need to get out there. And you need to, again, not to censor, but to offer something better. And to do it in a more effective way. So and the total lack of that basically is what really, that's what really bothers me. Wow. And people are going to become more and more effective. Technology will develop and offer more and more possibilities. We didn't get to talk about the virtual reality stuff, but these things are coming and they will come and it'll be easier and easier to fine tune the messaging to people. You can read people's emotions as you're messaging them. I mean, one of the one of the interesting things about virtual reality environments is that it isn't only the facial expressions that you're measuring to read emotions, but they're wired up to measure all kinds of biometrics.
Yeah.
And those measurements, and whatever the state of it is today, doesn't matter because they get better. They continue to get better and better and better. And you can see it's getting better and better. So people look at it and say, oh, yeah, well, it's pretty crude. Okay, it doesn't matter to you. You need to look at the derivative. How has things changed? How is it developing? And you'll be able to get really good emotional pictures of people, and you'll be able to completely fine-tune your messaging to their state, to their emotional state.
Yeah. And that's a very powerful message. Yeah.
And that is the big, so the thing that really keeps me up is a combination of, the increase in mass customization of messaging, together with a total lack of any real serious pushback. That's a bad combination.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think that's where I don't think that's necessarily. It isn't only where we're headed; it's where we already are. So that's what keeps me up.
More stories. May the best story win, as we like to say.
But it's not only the best story; it's how you tell it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The how you tell it matters a lot.
Yeah, I'm also thinking of I'm trying to think of more specific examples. We had something we've talked about with Sean is like the Luigi incident when the country was fired up about healthcare after a healthcare executive got shot, and that sparked a conversation that seemed to get quiet after some time, but I guess I'm thinking about the people can start to get fired up, but if the platforms have an agenda of what they're going to amplify and then snuff out versus the media companies, like who should be speaking up the loudest to push back? How could we channel that?
Well, obviously, it is something different than what we've got now. But we do have tools for people who want to use that. And they can be, it doesn't need, multi-billion-dollar company anymore. I mean, one of the great things about the technology is it's evolved. So you don't need a lot of money to use these things. You can do things pretty cheaply. And, but then it's a matter of, it's a question of the will for somebody to use it. The ways are there. Do we have the will to use them? I mean, it really comes down to that. Is there anybody out there who has the will to use these things? The problem is that, people who do have good intentions, they see what they see what I'm saying to do as somehow evil. This is a bad thing. Oh, you're exploiting people and manipulating people. The technology isn't inherently evil or good. It's like, I could take the kitchen knife, I could use it to chop vegetables, or I could use it to cut your throat. Knife doesn't care. And this technology is exactly the same. It's completely neutral. And it can be used either way. It can be used any way you want. But just so happens that most of the people using it are not really very nice.
My God, it's just such a good conversation.
But that's only by Excellent.
Well, we'll see if the public gets them to release the Epstein files.
Well,
That's the thing. People seem
That's how
to
you
be.
end that's how you end this
People-
conversation. But
Yeah.
People are banding together. That is one that hasn't gone away, and people are
is
very
one.
persistent with this
fair
message.
enough.
Well, but you know what it shows a little bit, which is actually interesting,
Go on.
is that, you know, the government thinks, Trump thinks specifically that he could, that he's got total control over his base. Okay, well, what this shows is that once you've let something loose, it starts to take a life of its own, and you start to lose control. You don't necessarily have control of it.
Yeah.
He's convinced these people of one thing, and now he's going to come and say something. Like the other day, he got on and said, we need to bring in 600,000 Chinese students. What the hell, people are saying, right?
Yeah.
You didn't hear him say that? Oh, yes. Yes, he said, we need to bring in 600,000 Chinese students.
What?
Yes, what? Why? After he's telling you that we need to throw all the foreign students out of the country, now all of a sudden we need to bring in 600,000 Chinese students. But in his mind, he can just make a switch just like that, and everybody will just buy it. But at some point, the message that you put out there takes on a life of its own.
Yeah.
It's the difference between one way to think about it is it's the difference between, a conventional weapon, which has a kill radius, which you could manage, you could measure. I mean, a classic standard bomb, we can measure what the kill radius is, how far the effect is, and it's all pretty limited. But once you get into the nuclear option, and once you release that stuff, it has a mind of its going where it's going to go, and then you have no control over it.
Yeah.
So, that's the biggest difference between conventional and nuclear weapons. At least there's a big difference. But with conventional weapons, where the kill radius is. Nuclear weapons, you actually don't have an idea. The results can be whatever, and it will go beyond whatever you thought you were intending to do. And that's the same thing with this kind of messaging as what Trump is saying. Once you put it out there, well, it's not yours to control exactly anymore. So I think that's the really interesting message, the thing to learn about this kind of influence campaigns and messaging. They really are the nuclear option in some sense. So in order to get it circumscribed to a small area, it's very tricky and very difficult to do that. So that's something people need to think about.
Rand, thank you so much. I know we're coming up on time. How can people find you?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. And is there anything you'd want to promote or let people know you're working on? Anything, any parting shout outs?
Just focus on, emotions, pay attention to emotion manipulation. See, can you detect people that are doing emotion manipulation? One of the ideas I had actually that I'm sort of working on, which was, I think, is kind of interesting, is this is a variation of a canary in a coal mine.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to do is have a virtual double in, say, a virtual reality environment that can detect a specific attempt to emotionally manipulate you into a certain situation. So it's sitting together with you, and can it detect that from what's going on when you can, and then warn you about that. So this is kind of like a digital canary and an emotional phone.
Oh my gosh. This is excellent. Rand, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all that you've shared, including, again, folks who go on Rand's LinkedIn for years now. Again, even that like disinformation 101 kind of shares that you've been posting out there. Your whole career has really been a service to this problem and try and get folks to listen. I do want you to know that, there are a whole bunch of folks that have read your stuff and are listening. I thank you again for being on the show.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I've come to talk with you again. Come and be inside my head. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you can cancel me. It's only a matter things to say. You can cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You can cancel me.